next session, which is a power panel, and we have an illustrious panel of people we've put together for you. This is employer branding, attracting the digital first audience. Now, digital natives, as we know them, Gen Zs, every brand is working on ways to garner the attention of Gen Zs, who they say don't spend too much time on anything. So they're fluctuating attention spans that we've heard about. In this discussion, we will bring forth ideas and thoughts on how brands can create new roads to present themselves in front of an audience that believes in doing multiple things at once while focusing on anything that helps them add value.
Before we begin, I thought it's good to sort of set a context as to quickly who are Gen Zs. Yeah. So, and the way to do it is probably to relate you to who we are here on stage. I was born in early 1980s, not really specifying the year. So I'm a Gen Y, I'm a millennial. My panelists here are Gen X, that's my estimation. My parents are baby boomers, and after us came the Gen Zs, the bells of the ball, the focus of the discussion here. My son, who is a 10-year-old, is a Gen Alpha, right? So with that context out of the way, I wanted to just dive right into the discussion here. Harsh, beginning with you. So what do you do in your organization and your industry to try to communicate to this Gen Zs? And how do you do it? And actually, more importantly, I really want to know why do you do what you do?
So thanks, and lovely to be here. And this lady who was just announcing said that the Gen Z didn't do much, and I've seen it on social media for most of the time, so they do social media a lot. But to give you a context of employer branding, I've always said, and we discussed yesterday, that companies should find their unique traits, weave them into stories, and then make sure that you attract and retain talent, and then brand it. Okay. However, a couple of things, and we had a discussion yesterday where I reiterated, employer branding has to have some traits. One, you have to be honest to yourselves. Sometimes organizations ape many others and start saying this is what I want to be, but the first trait is you have to be honest to yourself. Second, you have to be consistent, okay? And people have to believe in what you say. Now coming back to Tech Mahindra, we are a company which has 160,000 employees, 105 countries, fairly complex. And when we started looking at branding, our employer branding, we always asked ourselves, what will it be? And we were very clear, we are not going to pay the maximum. We are not the big four. But what can we do? And one of the things that really came back and from our employees was that, this company allows you to do things which are unique, which means you will be given opportunities to run many things. We came up with our branding, which said, our people value proposition, which said, freedom to explore. And we live up to it. I mean, my own example, I always gave, I'm not an engineer, I've never worked in IT, I've ran a large $500 million business, I do HR, marketing, corporate services, supply chain. It's possible. 4.5 years ago, we also said, we will distinguish or distinct ourselves by being the #1 employer for women. And people laughed. They said, IT company, like crazy. We also said we'll be the #1 company for careers and diversity and inclusivity of every kind. We talked about LGBT communities 5 years ago. We have 12 active communities, the only company in the world, right? We have lived with it for 5 years. We have remained the #1 company for women in India for the last 3 years. We are the #1 company for careers. And I think it made a difference. The difference it made is people believed, and we have the lowest attrition rates, by the way, in the industry. And therefore, I think employer branding is about you. It's about what's special about you. What can you live up to? What can you communicate well? And people believe and say, yes, that's the company I work for. So a longish answer to your short question, but I think it's a very important question that each one in HR needs to ask. But more importantly, before I end, I will say, employer branding has actually very little to do with HR. It is a business strategy. When we say we are going to be number one in diversity and inclusivity, it's a business differentiator, right? It cannot be an HR differentiator. Because if it's an HR differentiator, your CEO is not going to believe it. Your folks who are going to deliver is not going to believe it. And most of it, your employees are definitely not going to believe it. So I think that's the reason why we did what we did, and the reason why employer branding is so important.
Beautiful, wonderful. Just one thought from the keynote from Mr. Shifuman yesterday, if you remember the 10 lessons that he shared. One of the lessons was probably it's not the time for EVP anymore, it's probably the time for GP, right? Generational value proposition. And I thought, just taking that back as a context, but Harsh, coming back to you, and I'll come to you, Seema, next. Just quickly, I think we were discussing yesterday evening, like you were on the board of Chandigarh University, you jam with like 5,000 students at any point of time. What do you like, the vibe that you get from them, and how do you sort of feed that back into what do you do at the workplace at Tech Mahindra? Anything that you want to share, some interesting anecdote?
Yeah, we were discussing yesterday. See, India is blessed with the fact that there is a lot of young population, students who are bright. But unfortunately, our education system is such a, when you blink, you're a graduate. Right? Till you're a graduate, you don't even think what you're doing. Our vocation training in India is so weak. There was a debate in the last board meeting, and I said, and people said, what do you want to change to make students more relevant for the industry? And the first thing I said is, do away with this 99 percentiles and 98 percentiles and 100 percentiles, and you will start having people innovate. Today, people are so busy studying and marking their books that there is no question of innovation. So I think the reason that we learn is when people walk into my organization, first thing, we don't look at their scores. 100% not. The second thing, if in IT, innovation is key, and I hire folks who have never done anything which is out of the box, how will they innovate? If they've studied always, if they attended all their classes, if they've never failed, if they've never done something which is mischievous, why would they ever innovate? So first we break the rule and say, when you hire folks, you hire the right kind of folks. But then, like somebody said previously, give them an environment to thrive in the organization by giving them equal opportunities to make mistakes, to be themselves. And I think that's what we do very well. The reason we say freedom to explore, you can dream of whatever you want to be, and we will give you wings to fly. And the only big sort of promise we make to everybody who joins us, including many of folks who are sitting here, is we will give you wings to fly if you have the ability to dream, and if you have the ability to believe in those dreams that you think.
Lovely answer. I love one word that you used there, mischievous, which I hope the changes in the audience have picked up. Okay, Seema, come to you. So, what do you do at IIM to sort of, again, target the Gen Zs and ensure that employer branding happens in an impeccable way for our?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. So Reliance, right, as an employer brand, I don't think there's anybody in the country who has not heard of Reliance Jio. Number one conglomerate in terms of revenue, number one in terms of profitability, number one in terms of pretty much any growth measure in terms of our CAGR, right? For the last 33 plus years, we've been providing, right, shareholder return quarter on quarter, right? There's not a single quarter for the last 30 plus years that we have not grown, right, and provided shareholder value. By the way, we measure ourselves with 5 types of value. Shareholder value is, of course, one of them for our millions of shareholders. But the number one value actually we measure ourselves by is customer value, right, partner value, employee or workforce value, and then you talk about shareholders, right? The other value that we also measure ourselves by is everything that we do for society and for the community. On one hand, everybody knows about us. On the other hand, right, for several years, in fact, for several decades of our existence, on one hand, we have also been leadership. In our own way, right, it's been an evolution for us to actually have an active, very proactive employer branding strategy. So it's sort of a duality, right, in a sense, from a we are this big business, but we did not actually have a very proactive employer branding strategy until about maybe 5-7 years ago. Now, obviously, we've come a long way away from that. We've learned a lot, and many of my colleagues are probably in the room, outside, right at the conference, very strongly contributed to make this happen. So, created a strategy, and delivered to the same. We also, as you mentioned, right, generations hire and have very diverse generations within the workforce, all the way from baby boomers up to Gen Z, and now the millennials have started, right? I mean, actually, they're at internships, they're actually at some of the early career jobs, right? So Gen Z needs to start watching out for them as well. Now, when we start thinking about what their requirements are and what their needs are, once again, very diverse from the needs of, bulk of the workforce very often is Gen Y, Gen X, and relatively smaller volume of baby boomers at this point of time. But when we start thinking about their requirements, right, they don't think about careers in the same way that other generations think of, right? Loyalty is not necessarily a term that they want to see. They do want to see the corporates doing some things for them, right? But at the same time, it's not necessarily that they're coming in thinking that the next 30 years, the next 40 years, I'm necessarily going to stay with this organization. I'm necessarily going to grow in this organization. It's diversity of experiences on the other hand that they're looking for. Of course, at the end of that, they also want to grow in terms of responsibilities, in terms of other things that the company can offer. Safety nets, the way we understand, right? Traditionally, safety nets in terms of insurance and the like. Well, when there's an instance, yes, one wants to consume it, one wants to use it. In fact, we just went through a very interesting session on benefits, right? But there's huge diversity in the kind of benefits that this generation is also looking for, it, and their expectations from organizations are very different. So in that sense, I also think when you're thinking employer branding, one needs to start thinking of those different personas, what they're consuming, how they're consuming, what their needs are, what the needs of other stakeholders, right? And so, for example, perhaps at a certain generation, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when we used to hire different organizations, we used to think about, how do we influence the parents, right? How do we influence the families, and so on and so forth. But perhaps for this generation, while parents and families continue to stay relevant, the peers, right, and who they, consider is important, right? The validation of their organization from a social media standpoint, right, becomes extremely important. So those are some of the facets that one needs to start thinking and start traversing that journey, right? Which is what employer branding of the past, the last 10 years, 20 years, perhaps is not going to work for this generation. So those are my opening remarks. Happy to delve a little bit more into it.
Super, Sima, thank you. Raj, coming next to you, again, the same question, what and what you do and how do you do it, but also like Sima mentioned, some of the social media channels and all. If you can also start giving us a glimpse of the channels that you use.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just take a step back. Firstly, thank you for inviting me to this session. See, at entity, if you look at it, I will put it across the first entity. Entity as an organization is about $108 billion company, and we are into multifacets in terms of information technology and services. It's called entity data. Then you have telecom, which is Docomo. There's there's communication, and many so on and so forth. So I think from a branding strategy, we are very clear in terms of what we are trying to do, because we are very clear on the vision statement. We are very clear on what we are looking at it. That's where the importance has. Now, if you look at it today, the common thing which is happening is everybody looks at what other company is doing, what another IT company is doing. Can I follow that? Can I replicate that? And then we come back, right? But I think that's where the mistake is. But if you look at it, the current Gen Zs, I differ in terms of saying they're just only, after money, after the short span of thing. But why don't we take a differentiation and say Gen Zs from the campus graduate has over the period of time, has the salaries increased? Maybe marginally, right? But if you look at it, if the same person going and picking up a flat, as part of his, like we say, roti kabda makan, footbed, so all these things. But if you look at it, primarily that's where the difference is. Nothing has changed, but only thing is priorities have changed. So what we try to do is, as an organization entity data as such, from the campus, we have their incubation sessions. We try to bring them. We try to take their priorities, because now if you look at it, Gen X, we were not very clear as to what we want to do, but now Gen Zs are very clear. I want to get into technology. I want to get into mainstreams. I want to do this. So I think that's where the difference is, and what we do is we incorporate that at a very early stages. Firstly, then second thing is we also, as an IT organization, we call ourselves as global IT innovator, and we are a digital partner. So we are a digital partner. When we are saying that, we are already present. We have been, present in the digital space. And each individuals, today when they want to get in, they want to have that challenge. They want to have strategy. We give the space, and we want people to go edge over the others, but within the scope which they feel that, okay, that's my scope, that's my horizon, and I want to be there. So I think that's where we look at it, and that's where we try and do that. We bring in gamification in the whole idea of while hiring, or we give these options. We sponsor some of the hackathons. We look at, like for say, when we have done a rising event about a couple of months ago, and those are all things which we do it, and we take our leaders. Like Vinny initially we spoke about it. We are and we take our leaders to speak to them and say how's your career growth. I think those are our things which excite them, because today the Gen Zs are clear and they want something which has meat in it, the excitement in it. So that's what I think.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Jay, coming to you next. Again, same question. So what do you do? How do you do it?
Good morning. Thank you, Unstoppable as well as SHRM for inviting me to this panel. I was hearing to everybody's views, very interesting. Typically, I work for Last Minute Group. It's an 80-year-old organization, predominantly focusing on infrastructure, EPC, manufacturing and services. Most, around 60% of revenue comes from infrastructure. We build roads, bridges, airports, whatever you see. Create traffic jams on the road by creating metros, etc. Why branding is very, very important? In action, our revenue is around 21 billion USD, predominantly India, Middle East and across. And why branding is very much required for us is we have a philosophy of build your own timber. Most of our people join as a trainee and then grow in the organization and reach higher levels. Even today, most of my directors, full-time directors or employees who joined as a trainee, including my chairman and CEO and MD, joined as a trainee and grown up. I have completed 35 years in the organization today. So we predominantly focus on that. But especially in the last couple of years, branding is very important because of different opportunities available, and infrastructure is seen as a brick and mortar to go there, work at strength. But we have gone ahead, far ahead in terms of digitalization, in terms of bringing in technology. So we have to position ourselves in the market to attract the best of the best talent, because I know most of the recruitment is not the first four IITs, other IITs, newer IITs, and all the NITs, and some of the best government colleges, and a few private colleges we go. So we put the pride and purpose in the front, which is very much attracting to the newer generation. We make things that make India proud. We are the builders to the nation. So we build all the airports. We show what are the projects we do which is of national importance. We are into defense. We are into any infrastructure thing. Then next we talk about the challenging assignments which we give to them in terms of rotation. You will be in an airport project, that will move to a metro project. Different, you can grow faster. And the size of the projects are also huge scale. For example, a single project of high-speed rail is 25,000 crores. Today our order backlog is 4 lakh crores. So it's a huge opportunity is there for youngsters who perform. We literally say, or we mean it, sky is the limit for growth in the organization. What is of late, we have also started talking about we have been doing a lot of sustainability initiatives, put forth those sustainable initiatives, DEA initiatives, all those initiatives which we put and use multiple. It starts much before connecting with the candidate. At a college level, we do branding, where it is into social media, whether it is YouTube, whether it is LinkedIn, whether it is or Twitter, which is most of the events are published in that. Then once we get into the placement round, then the individual branding starts. We connect them to our online platform, we have a micro-learning platform, we send all the newsletters, as if they are employees, we send the newsletters, magazines to them. We not only write, the offer letter goes to the candidate, but also a thanking note to their parents. So, because it's an 8-month period, right? We do the recruitment somewhere in August, September, and they are going to join next July. By the time you forget that they got offered in LA. So keep on reminding, branding them. So a whole lot of effort is being done than before. Now it is very much important because of people getting distracted, peer pressure because somebody is joining an IT and they are moving forward. So there are, to show that it is a place where you can build your career at a long term. As said, we are also not the best of the best masters in the thing, but we give a career, we give a lot of learning opportunity. That is also another area which we pitch on. So it is very much important. Today's, based on the attributes of the millennials, plus your industry also, you have to see what type of industry you are. So accordingly, you have to change your branding strategy and keep reviewing it quite often.
So with 5 minutes remaining, if we touched upon the whys, the hows and whats, right? There's one question I wanted to ask all of you, and maybe Harsh can take this over, maybe one of you. What about the measurement of the impact, right? So any thoughts, how do you do it? Or do you want to measure it in a different way, or do you want to try the channel which you haven't yet tried? Maybe.
So, 2 things, and I'll take 30 seconds. All of us, HR, I'm presuming all our HR folks here, HR folks are quite interesting animals. We keep talking about personalization and then we generalize and say Gen Z. Maybe, I feel sometimes my traits might be, different from what the baby boomer kind of stuff is. The importance is on measuring, but the first thing is how do you communicate? For us, for example, and I have somewhere my HR tech here, in the company, we communicate in the language that the employees speak and where they are. So for example, our RISE philosophy, etc. is on Spotify. If you ever go on Spotify and say RISE at Tech Mahindra, you have a list of songs. You have podcasts on Spotify. We have memes, because people like memes, we communicate through memes, we communicate through, what we call the lingo of today. Right? But the measurement is very clear. Is the business impact. Does my employer branding actually get me the final deals? And I can tell you that I am going to, in every large deal, the final presentation is done by me on the differentiator of people. Because our resources is people, 64% of our cost is people. Right? The second measurement is about, does it work? What's your attrition rate? We are proud to say we are the lowest attrition in the industry, and when the great resignation was happening, we were coming down for 9 quarters, right? That's the second measurement. Third measurement, we say we provide great careers. Where are we on that? And we are 72% internal fulfillment. Highest in the industry, which means we give opportunities within to 72% of all the jobs that come in. And finally, our engagement scores are highest in the group at 4.58 out of 5, which also tells you that people believe in your story. So measurement has to be real for the business, has to be real for employees, and has to be real for your customers. Only then your employer branding is successful.
Super sharp, and I think we all took mental copious notes. Right? So yeah, Gaj, any thought on that?
I agree to Harsh what he says. Primarily the client focus, the client feedbacks. But if you look at it, some of the larger accounts, they have come back and they wanted to contribute and give them some kind of an extra bonus. They come every year, spend some time. They say these are our employees. So I think that makes a lot of difference in terms of the response mechanism, in terms of how do you measure. The other aspects is what kind of attrition is it. If you look at it, I think our in attrition, if you look at it, would be in the retention rate will be about 90%. So that kind of numbers, and there has been a drastic change in say during pandemic or now there's a dropping ratio which you're talking about. But only thing is, I have not seen anything which like people leaving the organization and they're very stable. If you look at it, average age of the people also, you look at it like everybody is senior, the junior lots are, looking up to their leaders, and I think that's what it has happened, and we have never impacted. I would say that there's people always there's kind of boomerangs come back if they go out, and they're very clear. So I think that way we made a huge success in terms of when we are doing. We have a lot of measures, other measures in terms of calculating, but certainly these are primary reasons in terms of how do you eventually you land on to the dollar value. What your clients are happy, are they willing to pay you extra? I think that's what makes the difference.
30 seconds.
Yeah, so very quickly, right, I'd like to draw a distinction between employer branding success metrics versus employee engagement success metrics versus HR metrics overall, right? And it's very easy to confuse engagement metrics and employer branding metrics, right? Engagement metrics are what you do within the organization to, retain, grow, motivate, engage, right, your talent pools, and so on, right? But when you're talking specifically about employer branding, my submission would be that, there are largely two things, right, that one focuses on, which is how do you attract latent talent, right, to your organization, right? And then what are the success measures of that, right? And that's where then your ability to get the talent pool, right, that you're looking for to support your business, right? And again, based on your business strategy, right? Do you need top-end talent? Are you looking at the next? Are you looking at the next? And in our case, right, they're very, very diverse businesses, and so the workforces that you require are also extremely diverse, right? And so, are we able to tap into that talent pool and attract them to our company becomes a measure of success from an external standpoint, right? Now, employer branding is also about continually reselling your company to yourself, and that's where it gets a little fuzzy between the engagement metrics and the employer branding metrics. But in short, I would like to submit that the success measures there are, does your employee who's already with you, right, understand who you are as an employer, and continually are you reselling yourself to that employee so that you can retain that employee, right? Which is a little different still from your engagement metrics. And that's where then, a lot of data around, the communications that you're making, the continued intent to continue to stay with you, right? All of those start becoming the metrics that you should be tracking, right, from an employer branding standpoint. Sorry, very short answer. I know you're short on time, but yeah.
Wonderful. You started with a question and you answered that also. I was thinking of pitching in this next half. I look at how can I attract talent. Okay, in the campus when I go, how many of them are waiting for last minute to come? How many of them get cleared? If I release an advertisement, how many people apply? How many applications I get into this? And these are some of the things which is spent. And definitely there is a spillover that continues to the existing employees also. That leads to a better engagement. We cannot draw a straight line, but predominantly I look at how have I seen from the outside. That is where I focus more on the branding initiatives. Thank you. I know we are running out of time, so
1 minute, really short. I want to thank all my panelists. Because I'd like to quiz, I want to ask all of you one last question. So what does Z in Gen Z stand for? Anyone? Does anyone know this? Yeah, you thought it's just an alphabet, it's not. Any guesses? Anyone from the panelists? So actually, Z stands for Zoomers, yeah, Gen Zoomers. But thank you to all four of you. I think just one anecdote. When I joined Unstop, I was filling up the employee form, and I realized I'm the second oldest employee in the company. And so I was taking a lot of notes, copious notes from all of you, on the what and the why and the how and how to measure it. So thank you so much for all your views. Thank you for being a patient audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.